The Fourth Book of the Odysseys of Homer, Part I. The Argument. Received now in the Spartan court, Telemachus prefers report To Menelaus of the throng Of wooers with him, and their wrong. Atrides tells the Greeks' retreat, And doth a prophecy repeat That Proteus made, by which he knew His brother's death; and then doth show How with Calypso liv'd the sire Of his young guest. The wooers conspire Their prince's death, whose treach'ry known Penelope in tears doth drown; whom Pallas by a dream doth cheer, And in similitude appear Of fair Iphthima, known to be The sister of Penelope. Another argument. Delta. Hereof the sire the son doth hear, The wooers conspire, the mothers fear. In Lacedæmon now, the nurse of Wales, These two arriv'd, and found at festivals With mighty concourse the renownéd king, His son and daughter jointly marrying. Alector's daughter he did give his son, Strong Megapenthes, who his life begun By Menelaus' bondmaid, whom he knew In years when Helen could no more renew In issue like divine Hermione, Who held in all fair form as high degree As golden Venus. Her he married now to great Achilles' son, Who was by vow betroth'd to her at Troy. And thus the Gods to constant loves give Nuptial periods, whose state here past, The Myrmidons' rich town, of which she shar'd In th' imperial crown, With horse and chariots he resign'd her to. Mean space, the high huge house with feasts did flow Of friends and neighbours, joying with the king, Amongst whom did a heav'nly poet sing, And touch his harp; amongst whom likewise danc'd Two, who in that dumb motion advanc'd Would prompt the singer what to sing and play. All this time in utter court did stay With horse and chariot, Telemachus, And Nestor's noble son Pisistratus, Whom Eteoneus coming forth descried, And being a servant to the king most tried In care and his respect, he ran and cried: "Guests, Jove kept Menelaus, two such men As are for form of high Saturnius' strain, Inform your pleasure if we shall unclose Their horse from coach, or say they must dispose Their way to some such house as may embrace Their known arrival with more welcome grace." He, angry, answer'd: "Thou didst never show Thyself a fool, Boethides, till now; But now, as if turn'd child, a childish speech Vents thy vain spirits. We ourselves now reach Our home by much spent hospitality Of other men, nor know if Jove will try With other after wants our state again; And therefore from our feast no more detain Those welcome guests, but take their steeds from coach, And with attendants guide in their approach." This said, he rush'd abroad, and call'd some more Tried in such service, that together bore Up to the guests, and took their steeds that sweat Beneath their yokes from coach. At mangers set, wheat and white barley gave them mix'd, And plac'd their chariot by a wall so clear It cast a light quite through it. And then they led Their guests to the divine house, which so fed Their eyes at all parts with illustrious sights, That admiration seiz'd them. Like the lights The sun and moon gave, all the palace threw A lustre through it; satiate with whose view Down to the king's most bright kept baths they went, Where handmaids did their services present, Bath'd, balm'd them, shirts and well napp'd weeds put on, And by Atrides' side set each his throne. Then did the handmaid royal water bring, And to a laver, rich and glittering Of massy gold, pour'd; which she plac'd Upon a silver caldron, into which Might run the water as they wash'd. Then set she near a polish'd table, on which all the cheer The present could afford A reverend dame that kept the larder set. A cook then came, and divers dishes, borne thence, serv'd again, Furnish'd the board with bowls of gold. And then, his right hand giv'n the guests, Atrides said: "Eat and be cheerful. Appetite allay'd, I long to ask of what stock ye descend. For not from parents whose race nameless end We must derive your offspring. Men obscure Could get none such as you. The portraiture Of Jove sustain'd, and sceptre‐bearing kings Your either person in his presence brings. An ox's fat chine then they up did lift, And set before the guests; which was a gift, Sent as an honour to the king's own taste. They saw yet 'twas but to be eaten placed, And fell to it. But food and wine's care past, Telemachus thus prompted Nestor's son, His ear close laying to be heard of none: "Consider thou whom most my mind esteems, The brass work here, how rich it is in beams, And how, beside, it makes the whole house sound; What gold, and amber, silver, ivory, round, Is wrought about it. Out of doubt the hall Of Jupiter Olympius hath of all this state The like. How many infinites take Up to admiration all men's sights." Atrides overheard, and said: "Lov'd son, no mortal must affect contention With Jove, whose dwellings are of endless date. Perhaps of men some one may emulate, Or none my house or me; for I am one That many a grave extreme have undergone, Much error felt by sea, and till the 8th year Had never stay, but wander'd far and near, Cyprus, Phœnicia, and Cydonia, And fetch'd the far off Æthiopia, Reach'd the Arembi of Arabia, And Libya, where with horns use yean their lambs, Which every full year ewes are 3 times dams; Where neither king nor shepherd want comes near Of cheese, or flesh, or sweet milk; all the year They ever milk their ewes. And here while I err'd, gather'd means to live One murderously unwares, unseen Bereft my brother's life, chiefly betray'd By his abhorréd wife. So hold I, not enjoying what you see. And of your fathers, if they living be, You must have heard this, since my sufferings Were so great and famous. From this palace here, So rarely well built, furnished so well, And substanced with such a precious deal Of well got treasure, banish'd by the doom Of fate, and erring as I had no home. And now I have, and use it, not to take The entire delight it offers, but to make Continual wishes, that a triple part Of all it holds were wanting, so my heart Were eas'd of sorrows, taken for their deaths That fell at Troy, by their revivéd breaths. And thus I sit here weeping, mourning still Each least man lost, and sometimes make Mine ill, in paying just tears for their loss, My joy; sometimes I breathe my woes, For in annoy the pleasure soon admits Satiety. But all these men's wants whet not so mine eye, Though much they move me, as one sole man's miss, For which my sleep and meat ev'n loathsome is In his renew'd thought. Since no Greek hath won Grace for such labours as Laertes' son Hath wrought and suffer'd, to himself nought else But future sorrows forging, to me hells For his long absence; since I cannot know If life or death detain him; since such woe For his love old Laertes his wise wife And poor young son sustains, whom new with life He left as sireless." This speech grief to tears, Pour'd from the son's lids on the earth, his ears, Told of the father, did excite, Who kept his cheeks dry with his red weed As he wept, his both hands us'd therein. Atrides then began to know him, And did strife retain, if he should let Himself confess his sire, or with all Fitting circumstances enquire. While this his thoughts disputed, forth did shine, Like to the golden distaff deck'd divine, From her bed's high and odoriferous room, Helen, to whom of an elaborate loom Adrastus set a chair. Alcippe brought A piece of tapestry of fine wool wrought. Philo a silver cabinet conferr'd, Giv'n by Alcandra, nuptially endear'd To lord Polybius, whose abode in Thebes, The Egyptian city, was, where wealth in heaps His famous house held; out of which did go, In gift to Atrides, silver bath tubs 2, 2 tripods, and of fine gold talents 10. His wife did likewise send to Helen then fair gifts, a distaff that of gold was wrought, and that rich cabinet that Philo brought, round and with gold ribb'd, now of fine thread full, of which extended, crown'd with the finest wool of violet gloss, the golden distaff lay. She took her state chair, and a footstool's stay had for her feet, and of her husband thus ask'd to know all things: "Is it known to us, King Menelaus, whom these men commend themselves for, that our court now takes to friend? I must affirm, be I deceiv'd or no, I never yet saw man nor woman so like one another, as this man is like Ulysses' son. With admiration strike his looks my thoughts, that they should carry now pow'r to persuade me thus, who did but know, when newly he was born, the form they bore. But 'tis his father's grace, whom more and more his grace resembles, that makes me retain thought that he now is like Telemachus, then left by his sire, when Greece did undertake Troy's bold war for my impudency's sake." He answer'd: "Now, wife, what you think I know, the true cast of his father's eye doth show in his eye's order. Both his head and hair, his hands and feet, his very father's are. Of whom, so well remember'd, I should now acknowledge for me his continual flow of cares and perils, yet still patient. But I should too much move him, that doth vent such bitter tears for that which hath been spoke, which, shunning soft show, see how he would cloak, and with his purple weed his weepings hide." Then Nestor's son, Pisistratus, replied: "Great pastor of the people, kept of God, he is Ulysses' son, but his abode not made before here, and he modest too. He holds it an indignity to do a deed so vain, to use the boast of words, where your words are on wing, whose voice affords delight to us, as if a God did break the air amongst us, and vouchsafe to speak. But me my father, old Duke Nestor, sent to be his consort hither, his content not to be heighten'd so as with your sight, in hope that therewith words and actions might inform his comforts from you, since he is extremely grieved and injur'd by the miss of his great father, suffering ev'n at home, and few friends found to help him overcome his too weak suff'rance, now his sire is gone. Amongst the people not afforded one to check the miseries that mate him thus. And this the state is of Telemachus." "O Gods," said he, "how certain now I see My house enjoys that friend's son, that for me Hath undergone so many willing fights, whom I resolv'd past all the Grecian knights To hold in love, if our return by seas The far off Thunderer did ever please To grant our wishes, and to his respect A palace and a city to erect. My vow had bound me, whither bringing then His riches and his son, and all his men From barren Ithaca, some one sole town Inhabited about him batter'd down, All should in Argos live. And there would I ease him of rule, and take the empery Of all on me, and often here would we, Delighting, loving each other's company, Meet and converse, whom nothing should divide, Till death's black veil did each all over hide. But this perhaps hath been a mean to take Ev'n God himself with envy, who did make Ulysses therefore only the unblest, that should not reach his loved country's rest. These woes made every one with woe in love. Ev'n Argive Helen wept, the seed of Jove. Ulysses' son wept, Atreus' son did weep, And Nestor's son his eyes in tears did steep. But his tears fell not from the present cloud That from Ulysses was exhal'd, but flow'd From brave Antilochus' remember'd dew, Whom the renown'd son of the morning slew. Which yet he thus excus'd: "O Atreus' son, old Nestor says, there lives not such a one amongst all mortals as Atrides is for deathless wisdom. 'Tis a praise of his, still giv'n in your remembrance, when at home our speech concerns you. Since then overcome you please to be with sorrow, ev'n to tears, that are in wisdom so exempt from peers, vouchsafe the like effect in me excuse. If it be lawful, I affect no use of tears thus after meals, at least at night; but when the morn brings forth with tears her light, it shall not then impair me to bestow my tears on any worthy's overthrow. It is the only right that wretched men can do dead friends, to cut hair and complain. But death my brother took, whom none could call the Grecian coward you best knew of all. I was not there, nor saw; but men report Antilochus excell'd the common sort for footmanship, or for the chariot race, or in the fight for hardy hold of place. "O friend," said he, "since thou hast spoken so At all parts as one wise should say and do, And like one far beyond thyself in years, Thy words shall bounds be to our former tears. O, he is questionless a right born son, That of his father hath not only won The person, but the wisdom; and that sire Complete himself that hath a son entire. Jove did not only his full fate adorn When he was wedded, but when he was born. As now Saturnius, through his life's whole date, Hath Nestor's bliss rais'd to as steep a state, Both in his age to keep in peace his house, And to have children wise and valorous. But let us not forget our rear feast thus. Let some give water here. Telemachus, the morning shall yield time to you and me to do what fits, and reason mutually." This said, the careful servant of the king, As Phaelion pour'd on the issue of the spring, And all to ready feast set ready hand. But Helen now on new device did stand, Infusing straight a medicine to their wine, That, drowning care and angers, did decline All thought of ill. Who drunk her cup could shed All that day not a tear, no, not if dead That day his father or his mother were; Not if his brother, child, or chiefest dear He should see murder'd then before his face. Such useful medicines, only born in grace Of what was good, would Helen ever have. And this juice to her Polydamna gave, The wife of Thoon, an Ægyptian born, Whose rich earth herbs of medicine do adorn In great abundance. Many healthful are, and many baneful. Every man is there a good physician Out of nature's grace, For all the nation sprung of Paeon's race. When Helen then her medicine had infus'd, She bad pour wine to it, and thus speech us'd: "Atrides, and these good men's sons, great Jove Makes good and ill one after other move In all things earthly, for he can do all. The woes past, therefore, he so late let fall, The comforts he affords us let us take, Feast, and with fit discourses make merry, Nor will I other use. As then our blood Griev'd for Ulysses, since he was so good, Since he was good, let us delight to hear How good he was, and what his sufferings were. Though every fight and every suff'ring deed Patient Ulysses underwent, exceed My woman's pow'r to number or to name. But what he did and suffer'd, when he came Amongst the Trojans, where ye Grecians all Took part with suff'rance, I in part can call To your kind memories. How with ghastly wounds Himself he mangled, and the Trojan bounds, Thrust thick with enemies, adventur'd on, His royal shoulders having cast upon Base abject weeds, and enter'd like a slave. Then, beggar like, he did of all men crave, And such a wretch was, as the whole Greek fleet Brought not besides. And thus through every street He crept, discov'ring of no man known. And yet through all this difference I alone Smok'd his true person, talk'd with him, but he Fled me with wiles still. Nor could we agree Till I disclaim'd him quite, and so, as mov'd With womanly remorse of one that prov'd So wretched an estate, whate'er he were, Won him to take my house. And yet ev'n there, Till freely I, to make him doubtless, swore A pow'rful oath to let him reach the shore Of ships and tents before Troy understood, I could not force on him his proper good. But then I bath'd and sooth'd him, and he then Confess'd, and told me all, and, having slain a number of the Trojan guards, retir'd, and reach'd the fleet, for sleight and force admir'd. Their husbands' death by him the Trojan wives shriek'd for, but I made triumphs for their lives. For then my heart conceiv'd, that once again I should reach home, and yet did still retain Woe for the slaughters Venus made for me, when both my husband, my Hermione, in bridal room, she robb'd of so much right, and drew me from my country with her sleight, though nothing under heaven I here did need, that could my fancy or my beauty feed. Her husband said: "Wife, what you please to tell Is true at all parts, and becomes you well. And I myself, that now may say have seen The minds and manners of a world of men, And great heroes, measuring many a ground, Have never, by these eyes that light me, found One with a bosom so to be belov'd As that in which th' accomplish'd spirit mov'd Of patient Ulysses. What brave man, he both did act and suffer, when he won The town of Ilion, in the brave built horse, When all we chief states of the Grecian force Were hous'd together, bringing death and fate Amongst the Trojans, you, wife, may relate, For you at last came to us. God, that would the Trojans glory give, gave charge you should approach the engine, and Deiphobus, the godlike, follow'd. Thrice ye circled us with full survey of it, and often tried The hollow crafts that in it were implied, when all the voices of their wives in it You took on you with voice so like and fit, And every man by name so visited, That I, Ulysses, the king Diomed, Set in the midst, and hearing how you call'd, Tydides, and myself, as half appall'd With your remorseful plaints, would passing fain Have broke our silence, rather than again Endure, respectless, their so moving cries. But Ithacus our strongest fantasies contain'd Within us, from the slenderest noise, And every man there sat without a voice. Anticlus only would have answer'd thee, but his speech Ithacus incessantly with strong hand held in, Till, Minerva's call charging thee off, Ulysses sav'd us all. Telemachus replied: "Much greater is my grief for hearing this high praise of his. For all this doth not his sad death divert, Nor can, though in him swell'd an iron heart. Prepare, and lead then, if you please, to rest. Sleep, that we hear not, will content us best." Then Argive Helen made her handmaid go, And put fair bedding in the portico, Lay purple blankets on, rugs warm and soft, And cast an arras coverlet aloft. They torches took, made haste, and made the bed, When both the guests were to their lodgings led, Within a portico without the house. Atrides and his large train wearing spouse, The excellent of women, for the way In a retir'd receit together lay. The morn arose, the king rose, and put on His royal weeds, his sharp sword hung Upon his ample shoulders, forth his chamber went, And did the person of a God present. Telemachus accosts him, who begun Speech of his journey's proposition: "And what, my young Ulyssean hero, Provoke thee on the broad back of the sea, To visit Lacedæmon the divine? Speak truth, some public good, or only thine?" "I come," said he, "to hear if any fame Breath'd of my father to thy notice came. My house is sack'd, my fat works of the field Are all destroy'd, my house doth nothing yield But enemies, that kill my harmless sheep And sinewy oxen, nor will ever keep Their steels without them. And these men are they that woo my mother, most inhumanly, committing injury on injury. To thy knees therefore I come, t' attend Relation of the sad and wretched end My erring father felt, if witness'd by Your own eyes, or the certain news that fly From others' knowledges. For, more than is the usual heap Of human miseries, his mother bore him too. Vouchsafe me then, without all ruth Of what I can sustain, the plain and simple truth Of all you know. Let me beseech so much, if ever vow was made, And put in good effect to you at Troy, Where suff'rance bred you so much smart, Upon my father good Ulysses' part, And quit it now to me, himself in youth, Unfolding only the uncloséd truth." He, deeply sighing, answer'd him: "O shame, that such poor vassals should affect the fame To share the joys of such a worthy's bed, As when a hind, her calves late farrowed To give suck, enters the bold lion's den. He roots of hills and herby valleys then For food, there feeding, hunting; but at length Returning to his cavern, gives his strength The lives of both the mother and her brood In deaths indecent. So the Wooers' blood Must pay Ulysses' pow'rs as sharp an end. O would to Jove, Apollo, and thy friend The wise Minerva, that thy father were As once he was, when he his spirits did rear Against Philomulides, in a fight Perform'd in well built Lesbos, where, downright, He strook the earth with him, and gat a shout Of all the Grecians. O, if now full out He were as then, and with the Wooers cop'd, Short liv'd they all were, and their nuptials hop'd Would prove as desp'rate. But, for thy demand Enforc'd with pray'rs, I let thee understand The truth directly, nor decline a thought, Much less deceive or soothe thy search in aught, But what the old and still true spoken God, That from the sea breathes oracles abroad, Disclos'd to me. To thee I'll all impart, Nor hide one word from thy solicitous heart. Part II. I was in Egypt, where a mighty time The Gods detain'd me, though my natural clime I never so desir'd, because their homes I did not greet with perfect hecatombs. For they will put men evermore in mind How much their masterly commandments bind. There is, besides, a certain island, call'd Pharos, that with the high wav'd sea is wall'd, Just against Egypt, and so much remote, As in a whole day, with a fore gale smote, A hollow ship can sail. And this isle bears a port most portly, where sea passengers put in still For fresh water, and away to sea again. Yet here the Gods did stay my fleet Full 20 days. The winds, that are masters at sea, No prosperous puff would spare to put us off, And all my victuals here had quite corrupted, As my men's minds were, had not a certain Goddess giv'n regard, And pitied me in an estate so hard. And 'twas Idothea, honour'd Proteus' seed, That old sea farer. Her mind I make bleed With my compassion, when, walk'd all alone, From all my soldiers that were ever gone About the isle on fishing with hooks bent, Hunger their bellies on her errand sent, She came close to me, spake, and thus began: "Of all men thou art the most foolish man, Or slack in business, or stayest here of choice, And dost in all thy suff'rances rejoice, That thus long liv'st detain'd here, and no end Canst give thy tarriance. Thou dost much offend The minds of all thy fellows." I replied: "Whoever thou art of the Deified, I must affirm, that no way with my will I make abode here, but it seems some ill The Gods, inhabiting broad heav'n, sustain Against my getting off. Inform me then, For Godheads all things know, what God is he That stays my passage from the fishy sea?" "Stranger," said she, "I'll tell thee true. There lives an old sea farer in these seas, That gives a true solution of all The secrets here, who deathless Proteus is, The Egyptian peer, who can the deeps Of all the seas exquire, who Neptune's priest is, And, they say, the sire that did beget me. Him if any way thou couldst inveigle, He would clear display thy course from hence, And how far off doth lie Thy voyage's whole scope through Neptune's sky, Informing thee, O God preserv'd, beside, If thy desires would be so satisfied, Whatever good or ill hath got event, In all the time thy long and hard course spent Since thy departure from thy house." This said, again I answer'd: "Make the sleights display'd thy father useth, Lest his foresight see, or his foreknowledge Take note of me. He flies the fix'd place Of his us'd abode; 'tis hard for man To countermine with God." She straight replied: "I utter truth in all. When heav'n's supremest height the sun doth skall, The old sea, tell truth, leaves the deeps, And hides amidst a black storm. when the west wind chides in caves still sleeping. Round about him sleep, with short feet swimming forth the foamy deep, the sea‐calves, lovely Halosydnes called, from whom a noisome odour is exhaled, got from the whirlpools on whose earth they lie. Here, when the morn illustrates all the sky, I'll guide, and seat thee in the fittest place For the performance thou hast now in chase. In meantime reach thy fleet, and choose out 3 of best exploit, to go as aids to thee. But now I'll show thee all the old God's sleights. He first will number, and take all the sights Of those his guard, that on the shore arrives; When, having view'd, and told them forth by fives, He takes place in their midst, and there doth sleep, Like to a shepherd midst his flock of sheep. In his first sleep, call up your hardiest cheer, Vigour, and violence, and hold him there, In spite of all his strivings to be gone. He then will turn himself to every one Of all things that in the earth creep and respire, In water swim, or shine in heav'nly fire. Yet still hold you him firm, and much the more Press him from passing. But when, as before, When sleep first bound his pow'rs, his form ye see, Then cease your force, and the old heroë free, And then demand which heav'n born it may be That so afflicts you, hind'ring your retreat, And free sea passage to your native seat." This said, she div'd into the wavy seas, And I my course did to my ships address, That on the sand struck, where arriv'd, we made Our supper ready. Then the ambrosian shade Of night fell on us, and to sleep we fell. Rosy Aurora rose, we rose as well, And 3 of them, on whom I most relied For firm at every force, I choos'd, and hied Straight to the many river servéd seas, And all assistance ask'd the Deities. Meantime Idothea the sea's broad breast Embrac'd, and brought for me, and all my rest, 4 of the sea calves' skins, but newly flay'd, To work a while which she fashioned Upon her father. Then within the sand, A covert digging, when these calves should land, She sat expecting. We came close to her, she plac'd us orderly, And made us wear each one his calf's skin. But we then must pass a huge exploit. The sea calves' savour was so passing sour, They still being bred at seas, it much afflicted us. For who can please to lie by one of these same sea bred whales? But she preserves us, and to memory calls A rare commodity. She fetch'd to us Ambrosia, that an air most odorous Bears still about it, which she nointed round Our either nostrils, and in it quite drown'd The nasty whale smell. Then the great event, the whole morn's date, With spirits patient we lay expecting. When bright noon did flame, forth from the sea In shoals the sea calves came, and orderly At last lay down and slept along the sands. And then the old sea God crept from forth the deeps, And found his fat calves there, survey'd and number'd, And came never near the craft we us'd, But told us 5 for calves. His temples then diseas'd with sleep he salves, And in rush'd we, with an abhorred cry, Cast all our hands about him manfully. And then the old forger all his forms began. First was a lion with a mighty mane, Then next a dragon, a pied panther then, A vast boar next, and suddenly did strain All into water. Last he was a tree, Curl'd all at top, and shot up to the sky. We with resolv'd hearts held him firmly still, When the old one, held too strait for all his skill To extricate, gave words, and question'd me. "Which of the Gods, O Atreus' son," said he, "Advis'd and taught thy fortitude this sleight, To take and hold me thus in my despite?" "What asks thy wish now?" I replied. "Thou know'st. Why dost thou ask? What wiles are these thou show'st? I have within this isle been held for wind A wondrous time, and can by no means find An end to my retention. It hath spent The very heart in me. Give thou then vent To doubts thus bound in me. Ye Gods know all. Which of the Godheads doth so foully fall On my addression home, to stay me here, Avert me from my way, the fishy clear Barr'd to my passage?" He replied: "Of force, if to thy home thou wishest free recourse, To Jove and all the other Deities Thou must exhibit solemn sacrifice, And then the black sea for thee shall be clear, Till thy lov'd country's settled reach. But where ask these rites thy performance? 'Tis a fate to thee, and thy affairs appropriate, That thou shalt never see thy friends, nor tread Thy country's earth, nor see inhabited Thy so magnificent house, till thou make good Thy voyage back to the Egyptian flood, Whose waters fell from Jove, and there hast given To Jove and all Gods hous'd in ample heav'n Devoted hecatombs, and then free ways Shall open to thee, clear'd of all delays." This told he, and methought he brake my heart, In such a long and hard course to divert My hope for home, and charge my back retreat As far as Egypt. I made answer yet: "Father, thy charge I'll perfect, but before Resolve me truly, if their natural shore All those Greeks and their ships do safe enjoy, That Nestor and myself left, when from Troy We first rais'd sail; or whether any died At sea a death unwish'd, or satisfied, When war was past, by friends embrac'd In peace resign'd their spirits." He made answer: "Cease to ask so far. It fits thee not to be so cunning In thine own calamity, nor seek To learn what learn'd thou shouldst forget. Men's knowledges have proper limits set, And should not prease into the mind of God. But 'twill not long be, as my thoughts abode, Before thou buy this curious skill with tears. Many of those, whose states so tempt thine ears, Are stoop'd by death, and many left alive, One chief of which in strong hold doth survive Amidst the broad sea. 2 in their retreat Are done to death. I list not to repeat Who fell at Troy. Thyself was there in fight. But in return swift Ajax lost the light In his long oar'd ship. Neptune yet awhile Saft him wrack'd to the Gyræan isle, A mighty rock removing from his way. And surely he had 'scaped the fatal day In spite of Pallas, if to that foul deed He in her fane did, when he ravished The Trojan prophetess, he had not here Adjoin'd an impious boast, that he would bear, Despite the Gods, his ship safe through the waves Then rais'd against him. These impious braves When Neptune heard, in his strong hand he took His massy trident, and so soundly strook The rock Gyræan that in two it cleft, Of which one fragment on the land he left, The other fell into the troubled seas. At which first rush'd Ajax Oïleades, And split his ship, and then himself afloat Swum on the rough waves of the world's vast moat, Till having drunk a salt cup for his sin, There perish'd he. Thy brother yet did win The wreath from death, while in the waves they strove, Afflicted by the reverend wife of Jove. But when the steep mount of the Malian shore He seem'd to reach, a most tempestuous blore, Far to the fishy world that sighs so sore, Straight ravish'd him again as far away As to the extreme bounds where the Agrians stay, Where first Thyestes dwelt, but then his son Ægisthus Thyestides liv'd. This done, when his return untouch'd appear'd again, Back turn'd the Gods the wind, and set him then Hard by his house. Then, full of joy, he left His ship, and close to his country earth he cleft, Kiss'd it, and wept for joy, pour'd tear on tear, To set so wishedly his footing there. But see, a sentinel that all the year Crafty Ægisthus in a watch tow'r set, To spy his landing, for reward as great As 2 gold talents, all his pow'rs did call To strict remembrance of his charge, and all Discharg'd at first sight; which at first he cast On Agamemnon, and with all his haste Inform'd Ægisthus. He in instant train Laid for his slaughter. 20 chosen men Of his plebeians he in ambush laid. His other men he charg'd to see purvey'd A feast, and forth, with horse and chariots grac'd, He rode t' invite him. but in heart embrac'd horrible welcomes, and to death did bring, with treach'rous slaughter, the unwary king; receiv'd him at feast, and, like an ox Slain at his manger, gave him bits and knocks; No one left of Atrides' train, nor one Save to Ægisthus, but himself alone; All strew'd together there the bloody court. This said, my soul he sunk with his report; Flat on the sands I fell; tears spent their store; I light abhorr'd; my heart would live no more. When dry of tears, and tir'd of tumbling there, The old Tell truth thus my daunted spirits did cheer: "No more spend tears nor time, O Atreus' son, With ceaseless weeping never wish was won. Use utmost assay to reach thy home, And all unawares upon the murderer come, For torture, taking him thyself alive; Or let Orestes, that should far outstrive Thee in fit vengeance, quickly quit the light Of such a dark soul, and do thou the rite Of burial to him with a funeral feast." With these last words I fortified my breast, in which again a generous spring began Of fitting comfort, as I was a man. But as a brother I must ever mourn. Yet forth I went, and told him the return Of these I knew; but he had nam'd a third, Held on the broad sea, still with life inspir'd, Whom I besought to know, though likewise dead, And I must mourn alike. He answer'd: "He is Laertes' son, whom I beheld In nymph Calypso's palace, who compell'd His stay with her; and since he could not see His country earth, he mourn'd incessantly. For he had neither ship instruct with oars, Nor men to fetch him from those stranger shores. Where leave we him, and to thyself descend, Whom not in Argos fate nor death shall end, But th' immortal ends of all the earth, So rul'd by them that order death by birth. The fields Elysian fate to thee will give, Where Rhadamanthus rules, and where men live A never troubled life; where snow nor show'rs No irksome winter spends his fruitless plow'rs, But from the ocean zephyr still resumes A constant breath, that all the fields perfumes; Which since thou married'st Helen, are thy hire, And Jove himself is by her side thy sire." This said, he div'd the deepsome watery heaps. I and my tried men took us to our ships, And worlds of thoughts I varied with my steps. Arriv'd and shipp'd, the silent solemn night And sleep bereft us of our visual light. At morn, mast, sails rear'd, we sat, left the shores, And beat the foamy ocean with our oars. Again then we the Jove fall'n flood did fetch, As far as Egypt, where we did beseech The Gods with hecatombs; whose anger ceas'd, I tomb'd my brother that I might be blest. All rites perform'd, all haste I made for home, And all the prosp'rous winds about were come. I had the passport now of ev'ry God, And here clos'd all these labours' period. Here stay then till the 11th or 12th day's light, And I'll dismiss thee well, gifts exquisite, Preparing for thee chariot, horses 3, A cup of curious frame to serve for thee To serve the immortal Gods with sacrifice, Mindful of me while all suns light thy skies." He answer'd: "Stay me not too long time here, Though I could sit attending all the year; Nor should my house nor parents with desire Take my affections from you, so on fire With love to hear you are my thoughts. But so my Pylian friends I shall afflict with woe, Who mourn'd ev'n this stay. Whatsoever be The gifts your grace is to bestow on me, Vouchsafe them such as I may bear and save For your sake ever. Horse I list not have, To keep in Ithaca, but leave them here, To your soil's dainties, where the broad fields bear Sweet cypress grass, where men fed Lote doth flow, Where wheat like spelt, and wheat itself doth grow, Where barley, white, and spreading like a tree. But Ithaca hath neither ground to be, For any length it comprehends, a race To try a horse's speed, nor any place To make him fat in; fitter far to feed A cliff bred goat, than raise or please a steed. Of all isles, Ithaca does least provide Or meads to feed a horse, or ways to ride." He smiling said: "Of good blood thou art, son. What speech so young? What observation hast thou made of the world? I well am pleas'd to change my gifts to thee, as being confess'd unfit indeed. My store is such I may. Of all my house gifts then, that up I lay For treasure there, I will bestow on thee The fairest and of greatest price to me. I will bestow on thee a rich carved cup, Of silver all, but all the brims wrought up With finest gold. It was the only thing That the heroical Sidonian king Presented to me, when we were to part At his receipt of me. And 'twas the art Of that great artist that of heav'n is free, And yet ev'n this will I bestow on thee." This speech thus ended, guests came, and did bring Muttons for presents to the godlike king, And spirit prompting wine that strenuous makes. Their ribbon'd wreath'd wives brought fruit and cakes. Thus in this house did these their feast apply, And in Ulysses' house activity The Wooers practis'd, tossing of the spear, The stone, and hurling. Thus delighted, where they exercis'd such insolence before, Even in the court that wealthy pavements wore, Antinous did still their strifes decide, And he that was in person deified Eurymachus, both ringleaders of all, For in their virtues they were principal. These by Naamon, son to Phronius, Were sided now, who made the question thus: "Antinous, does any friend here know, When this Telemachus returns, or no, From sandy Pylos? He made bold to take My ship with him, of which I now should make Fit use myself, and sail in her as far As spacious Elis, where of mine there are 12 delicate mares, and under their sides go Laborious mules, that yet did never know The yoke, nor labour; some of which should bear The taming now, if I could fetch them there." This speech the rest admir'd, nor dream'd that he Nelean Pylos ever thought to see, But was at field about his flock's survey, Or thought his herdsman held him so away. Eupitheus' son Antinous then replied: "When went he, or with what train dignified? Of his selected Ithacensian youth? Press'd men or bondmen were they? Tell the truth, Could he effect this? Let me truly know, To gain thy vessel did he violence show, And us'd her 'gainst thy will? Or had he her free, When fitting question he had made with thee?" Naamon answer'd: "I did freely give My vessel to him. Who deserves to live That would do other, when such men as he Did in distress ask? He should churlish be That would deny him. Of our youth the best Amongst the people, to the interest His charge did challenge in them, giving way With all the tribute all their powers could pay. Their captain, as he took the ship, I knew, who Mentor was, or God, a Deity shew Mask'd in his likeness. But to think 'twas he I much admire, for I did clearly see But yestermorn godlike Mentor here. Yet the other evening he took shipping there, And went for Pylos. Thus he went for home, And left the rest with envy overcome, Who sat, and pastime left. Eupitheus' son, sad, and with rage his entrails overrun, His eyes like flames, thus interpos'd his speech: "Strange thing! An action of how proud a reach Is here committed by Telemachus, A boy, a child, and we, a sort of us, Vow'd 'gainst his voyage, yet admit it thus, With ship and choice youth of our people too. But let him on, and all his mischief do. Jove shall convert upon himself his pow'rs, Before their ill presum'd he brings on ours. Provide me then a ship, and 20 men To give her manage, that, against again He turns for home, on the Ithacensian seas, Or cliffy Samian, I may interprease, Waylay, and take him, and make all his craft Sail with his ruin for his father's saft." This all applauded, and gave charge to do, Rose, and to greet Ulysses' house did go. But long time pass'd not ere Penelope Had notice of their far fetch'd treachery. Medon the herald told her, who had heard Without the hall how they within conferr'd, And hasted straight to tell it to the queen, Who, from the entry having Medon seen, Prevented him thus: "Now, herald, what affair Intend the famous Wooers in your repair? to tell Ulysses' maids that they must cease From doing our work, and their banquets dress? I would to heav'n, that, leaving wooing me, Nor ever troubling other company, Here might the last feast be, and most extreme That ever any shall address for them. They never meet but to consent in spoil, And reap the free fruits of another's toil. O did they never, when they children were, What to their fathers was Ulysses hear, Who never did 'gainst any one proceed With unjust usage, or in word or deed. 'Tis yet with other kings another right, One to pursue with love, another spite. He still yet just, nor would, though might, devour, Nor to the worst did ever taste of pow'r. But their unruled acts show their mind's estate. Good turns receiv'd once, thanks grow out of date. Medon, the learned in wisdom, answer'd her: "I wish, O queen, that their ingratitudes Were their worst ill towards you. But worse by far, And much more deadly their endeavours are, Which Jove will fail them in. Telemachus their purpose is, as he returns to us, To give their sharp steels in a cruel death. Who now is gone to learn, if fame can breathe News of his sire, and will the Pylian shore, And sacred Sparta in his search explore." This news dissolv'd to her both knees and heart. Long silence held her, ere one word would part. Her eyes stood full of tears, her small soft voice All late use lost, that yet at last had choice Of wonted words, which briefly thus she us'd: "Why left my son his mother? Why refus'd His wit the solid shore, to try the seas, And put in ships the trust of his distress, That are at sea to men unbridled horse, And run, past rule, their far engaged course, Amidst a moisture past all mean unstay'd? No need compell'd this. Did he it, afraid To live and leave posterity his name?" "I know not," he replied, "if the humour came From current of his own instinct, or flow'd From others' instigations. But he vow'd Attempt to Pylos, or to see descried His sire's return, or know what death he died." This said, he took him to Ulysses' house. After the Wooers, the Ulyssean spouse, Run through with woes, let torture seize her mind. Nor in her choice of state chairs stood inclin'd To take her seat, but the abject threshold chose Of her fair chamber for her loath'd repose, And mourn'd most wretch like. Round about her fell Her handmaids, join'd in a continuate yell. From every corner of the palace, all Of all degrees tun'd to her comfort's fall Their own dejections, to whom her complaint She thus enforc'd: "The Gods, beyond constraint Of any measure, urge these tears on me. Nor was there ever dame of my degree So past degree griev'd. First, a lord so good, That had such hardy spirits in his blood, That all the virtues was adorn'd withal, That all the Greeks did their superior call To part with thus and lose. And now a son, So worthily belov'd, a course to run Beyond my knowledge, whom rude tempests have made Far from home his most inglorious grave. Unhappy wenches, that no one of all, Though in the reach of every one must fall His taking ship, sustain'd the careful mind, To call me from my bed, who this design'd, And most vow'd course in him had either stay'd. How much soever hasted, or dead man laid, He should have left me. Many a man I have, that would have call'd old Dolius my slave, That keeps my orchard, whom my father gave At my departure, to have run and told Laertes this, to try if he could hold From running through the people, and from tears, In telling them of these vow'd murderers, That both divine Ulysses' hope, and his Resolve to end in their conspiracies." His nurse then, Euryclea, made reply: "Dear sov'reign, let me with your own hands die, Or cast me off here. I'll not keep from thee One word of what I know." He trusted me with all his purpose, and I gave him all The bread and wine for which he pleas'd to call. But then a mighty oath he made me swear, Not to report it to your royal ear Before the 12th day either should appear, Or you should ask me, when you heard him gone. Impair not then your beauties with your moan, But wash, and put untear stain'd garments on. ascend your chamber with your ladies here, and pray the seed of goat nurs'd Jupiter, divine Athenia, to preserve your son, and she will save him from confusion. The old king, to whom your hopes stand so inclin'd for his grave counsels, you perhaps may find unfit affected, for his age's sake. But heav'nly kings wax not old, and therefore make fit pray'rs to them. For my thoughts never will believe the heav'nly pow'rs conceit so ill the seed of righteous Arcesiades, to end it utterly, but still will please in some place evermore some one of them to save, and deck him with a diadem, give him possession of erected tow'rs and far stretch'd fields, crown'd all of fruits and flow'rs. This eas'd her heart, and dried her humorous eyes, when having wash'd, and weeds of sacrifice pure and unstain'd with her distrustful tears put on, with all her women ministers, up to a chamber of most height she rose, and cakes of salt and barley did impose within a wicker basket, all which broke in decent order. Thus she did invoke: Great Virgin of the goat preservéd God, if ever the inhabited abode of wise Ulysses held the fatted thighs of sheep and oxen, made thy sacrifice by his devotion, hear me, nor forget his pious services, but safe see set his dear son on these shores, and banish hence these Wooers past all mean and insolence. This said, she shriek'd, and Pallas heard her pray'r. The Wooers broke with tumult all the air about the shady house, and one of them, whose pride his youth had made the more extreme, said, Now the many Wooer honour'd queen will surely satiate her delayful spleen, and one of us in instant nuptials take. Poor dame, she dreams not what design we make upon the life and slaughter of her son. So said he, but so said was not so done. Whose arrogant spirit in a vaunt so vain Antinous chid, and said, For shame, contain these braving speeches. Who can tell who hears? Are we not now in reach of others' ears? If our intentions please us, let us call our spirits up to them, and let speeches fall. By watchful danger men must silent go. What we resolve on, let's not say, but do. This said, he choos'd out 20 men, that bore best reckoning with him, and to ship and shore all hasted, reach'd the ship, launch'd, raised the mast, put sails in, and with leather loops made fast the oars. Sails hoisted, arms their men did bring, all giving speed and form to everything. Then to the high deeps, their rigg'd vessel driven, they supped, expecting the approaching even. Mean space Penelope her chamber kept, and bed, and neither eat, nor drank, nor slept. Her strong thoughts wrought so on her blameless son, still in contention, if he should be done to death, or 'scape the impious Wooers' design. Look how a lion, whom men troops combine to hunt, and close him in a crafty ring, much varied thought conceives, and fear doth sting for urgent danger. So far'd she, till sleep all juncture of her joints and nerves did steep in his dissolving humour. When, at rest, Pallas her favours varied, when address'd an idol, that Iphthima did present, in structure of her every lineament, great soul'd Icarius' daughter, whom for spouse Eumelus took, that kept in Pheres' house. This to divine Ulysses' house she sent, to try her best mean how she might content mournful Penelope, and make relent the strict addiction in her to deplore. This idol, like a worm that less or more contracts or strains her, did itself convey, beyond the wards or windings of the key, into the chamber, and above her head her seat assuming, thus she comforted distress'd Penelope. Doth sleep thus seize thy pow'rs, affected with so much dis–ease? The Gods, that nothing troubles, will not see Thy tears nor griefs, in any least degree, Sustain'd with cause, for they will guard thy son Safe to his wish'd and native mansion, since he is no offender of their states, and they to such are firmer than their fates. The wise Penelope receiv'd her thus, bound with a slumber most delicious, and in the port of dreams. O sister, Why repair you hither, since so far off lie your house and household? You were never here before this hour, and would you now give cheer to my so many woes and miseries, affecting fitly all the faculties my soul and mind hold, having lost before a husband, that of all the virtues bore the palm amongst the Greeks, and whose renown so ample was that fame the sound hath blown through Greece and Argos to her very heart? And now again a son that did convert my whole powers to his love, by ship is gone, a tender plant, that yet was never grown to labour's taste, nor the commerce of men, for whom more than my husband I complain. And lest he should at any suff'rance touch, or in the sea, or by the men so much estranged to him that must his consorts be, fear and chill tremblings shake each joint of me. Besides, his danger sets on foes profess'd to waylay his return, that have address'd plots for his death. The scarce discerned dream said, Be of comfort, nor fears so extreme let thus dismay thee. Thou hast such a mate attending thee, as some at any rate would wish to purchase, for her power is great. Minerva pities thy delight's defeat, whose grace has sent me to foretell thee these. If thou, said she, be of the Goddess, and heardst her tell thee these, thou mayst as well from her tell all things else. Deign then to tell, if yet the man to all misfortunes born my husband lives, and sees the sun adorn the darksome earth, or hides his wretched head in Pluto's house, and lives amongst the dead. I will not, she replied, my breath exhale in one continued and perpetual tale. Lives he or dies he? 'Tis a filthy use to be in vain and idle speech profuse. This said, she through the keyhole of the door vanish'd again into the open blore. Icarius' daughter started from her sleep, and joy's fresh humour her lov'd breast did steep. When now so clear, in that first watch of night, she saw the seen dream vanish from her sight. The Wooers' ship the sea's moist waves did ply, and thought the prince a haughty death should die. There lies a certain island in the sea, 'twixt rocky Samos and rough Ithaca, that cliffy is itself, and nothing great, yet holds convenient havens that two ways let ships in and out, call'd Asteris, and there the Wooers hope to make their massacre.